The sound of the slap rang out, sharp and dry, cutting through the laughter and chatter in the living room. My cheek burned, the red imprint of Margaret's hand, my mother-in-law clearly visible. "Look at yourself, then look at Lila." She pointed straight at my face, in front of all the stunned guests. "Divorce! Get out of this house right now!" I turned to Connor Brooks, my husband, searching for a sliver of protection in his eyes. But he looked away, his gaze sinking into a corner of the room, his lips moving a few times before he finally muttered weakly, "Mom, stop. Everyone's watching." I nodded slightly, my lips pressed into a straight line. "All right then." Margaret froze. Her eyes narrowed, her hand trembling with rage. "You dare talk back? Trying to destroy this family, is that it?" Her voice shrieked through the suffocating silence of the room. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked straight toward the stairs. Behind me, I could hear the murmurs of the guests. Those high society friends of the Brooks family, the same faces that used to greet me with polite smiles. I felt Connor's eyes on me, hesitant, a bit frantic, but I didn't look back. As I stepped onto the stairs, Margaret's voice screamed from behind, "Connor! What are you doing just standing there? Stop her! Don't let her walk out with anything from the Brooks family." I heard his footsteps rushing after me, not because he was worried about me, but because he was afraid his mother would erupt again. Go back a few hours earlier, and I was still Jade, the invisible wife of Connor Brooks, running around to get everything ready for this dinner party just to please my mother-in-law. All because I forgot to buy my husband's favorite dish, she slapped me across the face in front of everyone. Upstairs, in the bedroom, the dim light cast a soft glow on the cream-colored walls, where our wedding photo still hung. My smile back then, one I thought would last forever. I knelt down and pulled the old suitcase from the bottom of the closet. A thin layer of dust covered its scratched silver surface. The click of the latch popping open echoed sharply, like it broke through the silence of the room. Connor stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, his eyes flickering between worry and confusion. "Jade, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just started packing. My belongings weren't much. A few dresses I loved, simple ones, not the glamorous outfits Margaret forced me to wear to fit the Brooks family, were neatly folded and placed into the suitcase. On the vanity table, my cosmetics. I bought them myself. I took them all. I opened the jewelry box, my fingers brushing across those cold gifts. A sparkling Tiffany diamond tennis bracelet, the gift Margaret gave me in my first year as her daughter-in-law, accompanied by a mocking smile. "Consider it compensation for your background." I left it there. The platinum necklace Connor gave me on our 3rd wedding anniversary was there too, cold like the promises he never kept. I didn't touch it. In the corner of the box, a tiny pearl necklace shimmered softly. My mother's last gift before she passed away. I picked it up. I put it around my neck, the chain gently resting against my skin, like a reminder of the self I had been hiding. Finally, I grabbed the old MacBook Pro from the desk. The case was scratched, but it was the only thing I truly needed. "You can't take that!" Margaret stormed into the room like a hurricane, yanking the laptop out of my hands. "My son paid for this," she hissed, her cold eyes looking as if she wanted to swallow me whole. I lifted my head, for the first time looking straight at her. "The invoice is in my email," I said. "It clearly shows my personal account paid for it, before I married Connor." She choked on her own breath, her face turning purple, her breathing stuck in her chest. I saw the corner of her mouth twitching, desperate to argue. Connor rushed in, grabbing his mother's arm. "Mom, it's just an old laptop." "Let her take it," he pleaded, as if trying to put out a fire before it spread. Old or not, she's not taking it, Margaret snapped, jerking her arm away, her gaze locked on me, as if clinging to her last shred of power. I didn't argue. I put the MacBook into the bag and zipped it. The suitcase was still only half full, surprisingly light, just like my life in this house. Empty, filled with things that never truly belonged to me. I pushed the suitcase toward Margaret and opened it wide. Go ahead, check, I said, or you'll accuse me of stealing the Brooks family fortune. She actually bent down, her ring-covered hands rummaging through my things roughly, as if she wanted to tear apart my calm. Seeing nothing valuable, she let out a frustrated grunt, stepped back, her lips pressed tight as if swallowing her anger. I pulled the suitcase toward the door and paused to change my shoes. Connor followed me, standing behind me, his voice soft, like he was afraid of cracking the air. Jade, don't be mad. Mom is old. Just apologize to her, and let's forget this ever happened. My hands froze midair, the shoelace dangling between my fingers. I lifted my head and looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I loved for 5 years. The one I thought I would grow old with. But on that face, all I saw was impatience, exhaustion, and cowardice. A man more afraid of embarrassment than losing me. Connor Brooks, I said quietly, I hope you won't regret this someday. With that, I opened the door and stepped outside. The noise of the party, Margaret screaming, the guests' whispers, all of it stayed behind me. I didn't go to a friend's house to crash for the night. I opened the Uber app on my phone and typed in the address of a high-end hotel downtown, the one I had booked a month ago. Precisely when I discovered that Connor had secretly transferred $250,000 from our joint account to his mother. A transaction with no explanation, no question, no conversation. That was when I knew. This day, the day I would leave that house, was only a matter of time. The Uber slid smoothly through the city streets at night, neon lights reflecting off the windows like broken fragments of 5 years of marriage. I sat in the back seat, fingers gripping the small pearl necklace my mother left me. Its coolness calmed the dull ache in my chest. The hotel receptionist, a young woman in a navy uniform, smiled politely as she checked me in. "Welcome, Ms. Larson," she said softly, handing me the cold room keycard. I took it, the smooth metallic edge sparking a strange clarity in my mind. The room was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city glowing with lights. I leaned the suitcase into the corner, didn't open it. I didn't want to see the broken pieces of the life I'd just left behind. I walked over to the window and pressed my forehead against the freezing glass. I felt like a ghost floating midair, with nothing to hold on to, nowhere to land. My phone buzzed, screen lighting up with the name Phoebe Sullivan, my best friend. "Jade, you really left? Good for you!" Her voice burst with excitement through the speaker, like she was right there beside me. "You won't believe it, but the second you left, the whole house blew up." I leaned against the glass, my breath fogging up a small patch. "Really?" I asked, my voice hoarse, not from curiosity, but from exhaustion. "At first, your mother-in-law kept bad-mouthing you, saying she'd trained you into being so obedient. But now the whole place is a mess." Phoebe laughed loudly, but I only managed a slight curve of my lips. I couldn't bring myself to laugh. In my head, I pictured Margaret standing in the middle of the living room, hands on hips, yelling about my disobedience, while guests murmured all around. These past years, I had taken such good care of him. So good, he forgot. A tidy home, a perfectly ironed shirt, a hot dinner. None of that just magically happened. "He deserves it," I finally said, my voice gravelly. "Damn right," Phoebe replied, then lowered her voice like she was about to share a secret. "Oh, and by the way, Karen from next door said that Lila Harper, from across the street, is at your place now. Said she came to comfort your mother-in-law and is helping her clean up the house." "Lila?" The one Margaret always praised as the perfect daughter-in-law. Young, Yale graduate, marketing job, always hovering close to Connor, with flirty eyes that everyone noticed. Margaret didn't like her because she was good. She liked her because she was useful, someone to compare me to, pressure me with, belittle me. Well, now she got what she wanted. I hung up, my fingers trembling slightly as I touched the screen. Immediately, an unknown number called. I slid to answer, already knowing who it was. "Jade Larson, are you done making a scene yet?" Connor's voice shouted, irritated like a man who just tore apart his closet and couldn't find a freshly pressed shirt. I held the phone away from my ear, letting him shout into the void. "Mom's old. You know what she's like. Just come back, apologize, and everything will be fine." His voice was full of assumption, with a hint of arrogant condescension, like he still thought I was that obedient wife who'd come crawling back. I didn't answer. My thumb slid gently and ended the call. Then, with one more tap, I blocked his number. Every gesture was like a cut, erasing the last remaining good memories I had of Connor Brooks. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. The warm water ran over me, melting the cold from my body, waking up parts of me that had been asleep for 5 years. It wasn't that I had nowhere to go. It was just that, finally, I didn't have to pretend anymore. After drying off, I put on the bathrobe and stepped back into the room. The city lights still sparkled outside the window. The old MacBook Pro, the one Margaret once treated like garbage, sat on the desk. I opened it, and the familiar startup chime echoed through the room. The screen lit up, lines of red and green graphs flickering to life. I looked at the numbers, the curves of growth, and felt a strange calm spreading through my chest. I logged into my personal investment account under the name Queen J. In the top right corner of the screen, a long row of numbers, representing my entire net worth, sat quietly, still but heavy. For 5 years of marriage, I played the role of gentle Jade, frugal, family-oriented. No one knew that before I met Connor, I was Queen J, a somewhat familiar name on r/Wall Street bets and the Bloomberg terminal. In those upside-down, high-strung days and nights, I used to live in the world of stocks, bonds, and bold bets. I chose to step back, put everything aside to be a wife, a mother, thinking Connor was a safe harbor. Turns out, he was the storm, pulling me into years of sacrifice and invisibility. But I never truly stopped. For 5 years, I quietly used my old savings and investment knowledge to build long-term portfolios. The money in the account grew like a snowball, rolling, expanding, silently but powerfully. Each month, I transferred living expenses into the joint family account, so Connor and Margaret would think I was just thrifty or lucky with investments. They had no idea that the Porsche he drives, the down payment came from me. The Tiffany diamond tennis bracelet Margaret flaunts everywhere, $600,000 at a Sotheby's auction, was purchased by me, handed to her through Connor. The luxury condo they live in, the one Connor thinks he's providing, was actually paid for from my account. I took a deep breath, fingers gliding across the keyboard, reopening the Substack newsletter I had abandoned for years. The avatar was still the same, just a sharp, clean Q against a black background. The follower count set at 1 million subscribers, like a greeting from my past. I typed a single line. "Long time no see, I'm back." My fingers hesitated on the enter key, then pressed firmly. Send. 1 second. 2 seconds. The private inbox and comment section exploded like a bomb had dropped. Queen J ! "We thought you'd been abducted by aliens!" Someone wrote, full of excitement. "The Queen is back!" "Quick, tell us. Tech stocks or gold right now?" Another comment came flooding in. Invitations from investment firms, hedge funds, senior recruitment offers poured in like falling snow. I skimmed through, my eyes glancing but not replying. I closed the app, the screen went dark. This was only the beginning. 2 days later, Connor used another unknown number to call me. This time, his voice was softer, but still full of accusation. Jade, why haven't you transferred the living expenses to the account? The card's running low. I let out a cold laugh, the sound echoing softly in the quiet room. Connor, I replied, we're getting divorced. You really think I'm still obligated to support you? Divorced? What divorce? I didn't agree to anything. His voice cracked, rising high like he was losing control. Stop making a scene. Mom said if you just come back and apologize, everything will be forgiven. Connor, I cut him off, my voice as sharp as the knife I used to hold in the kitchen. Do you really think I can't survive without you? On the other end, silence. Only his heavy breathing. That's not what I meant. But you don't have a job, no income. Where do you think you're going to go? I laughed. A laugh from deep within, bitter and strangely satisfying, because of how pathetic and ridiculous he sounded. Don't worry about it, I said. By the way, the car you're driving, that monthly payment comes straight out of my personal account. I've already stopped covering it this month. What? His voice cracked, nearly a scream, like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water on him. And another thing, I continued, my fingers tapping lightly on the table, rhythm steady like my heartbeat now. That Tiffany diamond tennis bracelet on Margaret's wrist? I paid $600,000 for it at auction. I have the invoice and certification documents. When the divorce goes through, we'll be sorting all of that out. Jade, he stammered, his voice trembling. But I didn't give him the chance to finish. My finger slid gently, and I hung up. The world suddenly went eerily quiet, as if every sound had vanished, leaving only the steady, strong rhythm of my heartbeat. I ordered a plate of lobster spaghetti through room service, the rich, buttery aroma spreading as the server placed the silver tray on the table. I poured a glass of white wine, settled into the sofa, and started a newly released movie. The film had only played halfway, just as the main character stepped out of her past, when my phone buzzed. Phoebe Sullivan's name lit up on the screen. I picked up, and before I could say anything, her voice burst out in a rush. Jade! Something big is happening. Get on the live stream now. Your mother-in-law and Connor found out where you're staying. They're making a scene in the lobby. I froze, hand suspended mid-air, the glass of white wine tilting slightly, nearly spilling. I grabbed my phone, fingers swiping quickly to find the live stream Phoebe mentioned. The video loaded in sharp detail. A lavish hotel lobby with glossy marble floors. And at the center, Margaret, seated like an enraged queen, holding a phone up to live stream. My daughter-in-law stole our money and ran off with a sugar daddy. Her voice screeched, sharp as a blade. She took all our money and is living in a $15,000 a month apartment. Of course she has a sugar daddy. Connor stood beside her, face pale, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to disappear. He didn't say a word, but his silence. That was the greatest betrayal. Security staff stood around them, visibly uncomfortable, their eyes darting between Margaret and the curious crowd that had gathered. She's definitely a thief! Margaret jabbed her finger toward the camera, her face twisted with rage, like a demon under the lobby's sparkling lights. A housewife can't afford $15,000 a month. We're calling the police to arrest her. Phoebe's voice on the other end was near panic. Jade, are you okay? They're crazy. What are you going to do? I looked up, eyes drifting to the screen of my MacBook, where I had just closed a $10 million investment gain. I held the phone to my ear, my voice light and smooth, without a ripple. Phoebe, do me a favor. Call the police. The police arrived quicker than I expected, sirens echoing up from the street below. I didn't go down. Not necessary. Instead, I called my lawyer, Vanessa Reed. Vanessa, I said calmly, as if placing a dinner order, would you mind coming to the hotel? Someone just accused me of theft. I stood up, pushed aside my nightgown, opened my Rimowa suitcase, and pulled out a tailored white suit. The silk hugged my body, cool, crisp, and razor-sharp. I applied light makeup, a hint of rose lipstick, a thin line of eyeliner, looked in the mirror, and saw Jade Larson, not Connor Brooks's wife. I sat back on the sofa, legs crossed, and resumed watching the film. Thanks to Margaret's livestream, I had every detail in hand. The police entered. Margaret grew more hysterical, pointing at a photo on Connor's phone, screaming, "That's her! My daughter-in-law, Jade Larson. She stole from our family and ran away." Connor stood beside her, head bowed, lips pressed tightly, as if trying to vanish from the frame. His silence, like always, was his loudest betrayal. One of the officers, a middle-aged man with a calm, even voice, followed protocol. "Do you have any proof?" "Proof?" Margaret nearly shouted, hands flailing. "A regular housewife suddenly moves into a luxury $15,000 a month apartment. What more proof do you need?" Her logic drew quiet snickers from the onlookers, half mocking, half incredulous. Just then, Vanessa Reed entered the lobby with commanding grace. Two assistants followed behind her, each carrying sleek black document cases. Vanessa's gray suit was sharp. Her gaze swept across the room before landing on the Brooks pair. "Who is Mrs. Margaret Brooks?" "Who is Mr. Connor Brooks?" Her voice was composed, but the presence it carried froze the air in the lobby. Margaret stiffened, her mouth slightly open. Connor looked up, panic in his eyes, hands slipping out of his pockets with nowhere to go. "I am the legal representative of Miss Jade Larson. My name is Vanessa Reed," she said, her voice steady like a court verdict. "Regarding the accusation of theft against my client, we reserve the right to sue both of you for defamation and character damage." Vanessa opened the case, pulling out a stack of documents, crisp and neatly arranged. "First," she began, "this is a statement of Ms. Larson's personal investment account over the past 5 years. Every transaction, large and small, is clearly documented. Not only has she never spent a cent of Mr. Brooks' money, she has consistently provided living expenses for the family. All transfers are recorded here." Margaret blinked, her flushed face slowly turning pale. Connor stepped half a pace back, as if to hide behind her. "Second," Vanessa continued, flipping to another folder, "the rent for this apartment is paid directly from Ms. Larson's personal account. It has nothing to do with either of you. Third," she paused, her eyes locking onto Connor, "Mr. Connor Brooks unilaterally transferred $250,000 from the joint account into Mrs. Margaret's Roth IRA without Ms. Larson's consent 1 month ago." Each of Vanessa's sentences struck like a hammer blow. Margaret's face shifted from rage to shock. Connor's head dropped lower, his fists clenched, as if trying to punch through the truth. The crowd began whispering, their eyes turning from suspicion toward me to scrutinizing the mother and son. Mocking, curious. "At this time," Vanessa concluded, her voice cold as ice, "my client demands that you cease all defamatory and invasive actions. Otherwise, we'll see you in court." Margaret was completely silent, her hands trembling, eyes darting toward Connor for help. But he kept his head down, unable to face the reality. With the intervention of the police and Vanessa's overwhelming presence, the farcical drama ended. The live stream was cut off, leaving an awkward hush in the lobby. From start to finish, I never had to show my face. Something this small, my lawyer handled it effortlessly. Afterward, I cut off all contact with the Brooks family. The next day, I received an invitation from a leading private investment fund to become a partner in an ambitious new energy project. I rented an office on the top floor, where the glass towers glittered beneath the sun. I built my own team, sharp minds, the best people, ready to turn ideas into reality. I was no longer Jade who lingered in the kitchen, living to please Connor and Margaret. Every morning, I dressed in premium tailored suits, the silk hugging my body. The sharp click of my Louboutin heels echoed on the marble floors, as precise as the rhythm of my heart now. I moved through elegant office buildings, sat at boardroom tables, made decisions alongside executives and investors, people who looked at me with respect. Outside of work, I hit the gym, took art classes, tasted wine, attended exhibitions. I made sure my life stayed vibrant and alive. My social media account became the ideal lifestyle inspiration in the eyes of thousands. The photos I posted grew more radiant each time. One evening, after I uploaded a photo from an art show, Phoebe texted me with a grinning emoji. "Jade, you're glowing so much now, I don't dare look straight at you," I smiled, fingers gently swiping across the phone screen. That light, I had earned it step by step from the ashes of 5 years of marriage. One morning, just after I finished a meeting about the energy project, my phone buzzed. Vanessa Reed's name appeared. I picked up the call, leaning back into the leather chair. "Ms. Larson." Vanessa's voice came through. "Mr. Brooks's side wants to discuss the divorce terms." "What did he say?" I asked, fingers tapping rhythmically on the table, eyes drifting to the rush of traffic below. "He's rejecting the current asset division proposal, says you're asking for too much." I frowned slightly, a cold smile flickering at the corner of my lips. Connor, the man who never understood my value, still thought he had room to negotiate. "Then tell him," I said, voice calm and steady. "If he wants a mutual divorce, that's the only proposal. If he drags it to court, I won't just divide marital assets. I'll sue to reclaim the $250,000 he and his mother transferred without my consent, plus damages for defamation." His choice, Vanessa chuckled softly on the other end, as if she'd expected that answer. "I'll pass it on," she said, then hung up. I stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. "Connor, soon enough, you'll understand what real regret looks like." In the end, Connor still chose to compromise. Perhaps Vanessa had already laid out all the pros and cons, making him understand clearly that once taken to court, the only one who would lose was him. Through his lawyer, he asked to meet me one last time, before signing the divorce papers. I agreed. Not because I had any feelings left, but because I needed a final farewell, to put a firm ending to that foolish chapter of my past. The place I chose was a cafe right below my office. I arrived 5 minutes early and picked a seat near the big window. Sunlight poured through the glass, warm and gentle. Connor arrived on time, but in less than a month, he looked like a completely different person. Unshaven, messy stubble, a dull gray shirt stained at the collar and sleeves. He and I, like we had come from two completely opposite worlds. He sat across from me, awkwardly wringing his hands, fingers gripping the edge of the table, too afraid to lift his eyes to meet mine. "Jade?" His voice was hoarse, like every word had to be scraped painfully from a dry throat. "Have you been doing well lately?" I lifted the coffee cup, took a small sip, warmth spreading across my tongue. I didn't answer. I simply set the cup down. "Just say what you came to say," I replied, calm and polite, but distant, like I was speaking to a complete stranger. "I have an international meeting this afternoon." That coldness was like a knife straight into him. Connor lowered his head further, his shoulders trembling, his voice cracking. "Jade, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." He began to stutter out confessions, each word chewed apart before leaving his mouth. He said he shouldn't have been so weak, shouldn't have let his mother dictate our lives, shouldn't have stayed silent when I needed him the most. He said he now understood how terrifying a home is without me. Clothes piled up, the place a mess, dinner nothing but cold fast food. He said Maggie and Lila argue every day over money, and he's going crazy stuck in the middle. He said he regrets it, regrets losing the only woman who truly loved him. I sat quietly, fingers touching the coffee handle, as if listening to a story that had nothing to do with me, told by a stranger. If he had said these things on the night his mother slapped me in front of everyone, maybe I would have felt something. But now, they were just empty sounds. When he finished, he looked up at me, eyes dark and hopeful. "Jade, can you forgive me?" "Let's start over." His voice broke apart. "I'll move out right away. I won't let my mother interfere anymore. I'll do everything you ask, okay?" I looked at his pitiful state. There was a hint of pity. But pity is not love. Even now, he still didn't understand why I left him in the first place. "We're done, Connor," I said, my voice steady like reciting a contract. "Jade, do you have to be so firm?" he stammered, voice shaking, his hand reaching toward mine but freezing halfway in the air. "Connor," I looked straight into his eyes. "When your mother slapped me in front of everyone and you only said stop it, what were you thinking then?" His face turned pale, lips trembling. "When she pointed at me, calling me useless, telling you to kick me out, and you stood there silent." He inhaled sharply, but no answer came, his gaze flickering away. "In the hotel lobby, when she accused me of stealing, of running off with a sugar daddy, while you stood next to her without a single word. Did you really think there was still love between us?" With every sentence I spoke, his face lost another shade of color. By the end, he slumped in his seat like a puppet, with its strings cut, shoulders shaking violently, completely speechless. "Divorce," I concluded, my voice soft but final, like the last verdict. "This is the best ending for both of us." The divorce agreement was thoroughly reviewed by attorney Vanessa. The condo we once lived in was Connor's premarital asset. I didn't touch it. But the Porsche he drove, including the down payment and over half the loan, a total of $300,000, came from my personal account. He had to repay it, not a cent short. The money in our joint account, mostly profits from my investments over the past 5 years, was backed by detailed statements and transaction records. I demanded a 65% share. The $600,000 Tiffany diamond tennis bracelet on Margaret's wrist, the one I bought at a Sotheby's auction and had Connor gift to her, Vanessa converted its value to cash. Altogether, Connor had to pay nearly $2 million in a single payment. When Vanessa sent over the agreement, Connor nearly exploded after reading it, his voice cracking in shock. "No, no way!" he practically shouted over the phone at Vanessa. I heard every word through the speaker in my office. "Is she trying to ruin me? Where the hell am I supposed to get that kind of money to give her?" "Whether you have it or not isn't up to you," I replied through Vanessa, my voice calm like I was reciting a contract. "This is what I rightfully deserve. Not a penny more, not a penny less." 3 days later, Vanessa called back, her voice gentle but unable to hide the smile of victory. "Ms. Larson, Connor has signed the divorce papers." On the day of the procedure, Connor and I met outside the courthouse. He looked even more worn out than the last time at the cafe. Throughout the entire process, we didn't exchange a single word. When the judge struck the gavel and the divorce was granted, I held the certified copy in my hand, feeling like the weight of 5 years had finally been lifted off my shoulders. My rebirth was only just beginning. The compensation payment from Connor was transferred into my account faster than I expected. I heard he sold the premarital condo and moved back in with his parents, squeezed into an old rundown house in the suburbs. Maggie and Leela argued daily, the house a constant mess, no trace of the glamorous dinner parties I used to prepare. All of it. None of it mattered to me anymore. With that money, I bought a penthouse, the most expensive in the city. I stood in a home that was truly mine, holding a glass of champagne. My eyes swept over the city below, towers ablaze with light, traffic flowing like rivers of illumination. And for the first time, I felt the solidity of having my fate in my own hands. My career took off like a strong wind, pushing me higher than I'd ever imagined. The new energy project I led became a legend in the industry in just 1 year. The name Queen J was no longer just a username on r/Wall Street Bets. It became a golden brand, a symbol in the investment world. Collaboration offers poured in from around the globe, handshakes across boardrooms, respectful glances, all directed at Jade Larson, a woman who no longer had to prove anything to anyone. I was me, Jade Larson, the diamond once buried in darkness, now shining on her own. News about Connor and Margaret became nothing more than passing updates through Phoebe's voice. I heard that after losing all financial support from me and selling off the only condo he had, their lives took a nosedive. Margaret, once so proud, flaunting the diamond bracelet I bought, now couldn't stand the cramped, decaying old house. Every day, she muttered and cursed, calling Connor useless, blaming him for not being able to hold on to money. Connor, crushed by pressure from work and life, became bitter, worn down, a ghost of the man he used to be. I listened with no emotion. Everyone pays the price for their own ignorance and cruelty. I didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel resentful. I just no longer cared. They were the past. I was living in the present, free and radiant. That day, I was invited to a high-profile charity gala where top business leaders gathered. I wore a silver gown, silk flowing like water, hugging my figure, glimmering under the chandeliers. On my arm was Edward, a British gentleman with an Oxford degree, a charming smile, and warm eyes. We were about to step onto the red carpet when my eyes accidentally caught two familiar figures, faint in a corner of the event. It was Connor, but not the Connor Brooks who once toasted wine glasses at parties I hosted. He was wearing a black service uniform, blending in with the temp staff, holding a tray of champagne, head down, avoiding the eyes of every well-dressed guest. Our eyes locked unexpectedly. Connor froze, like time had stopped. The tray in his hands trembled violently, the champagne glasses nearly tipping. In those dark, sunken eyes, I saw shock, shame, regret, and a deep insecurity, like someone blinded by a light too bright to bear. I didn't stop walking. My lips didn't move, no mocking smile, no look of pity. I simply drew my gaze back, tightened my grip on Edward's arm, and smiled gracefully as I walked right past my ex-husband. The grand hall opened up before me, the chandeliers casting light like thousands of shattered diamonds. Edward politely pulled out my chair, his British accent warm and low. "Someone you know?" I lifted a silk napkin, gently laid it on my lap, and shook my head with a faint smile, as soft as moonlight. "No, I don't know him." I sat there, champagne sparkling in my hand, eyes scanning the room where powerful people mingled, laughed, and talked. I was no longer the jade who gave up the spotlight to be the silent wife beside Connor. I had been dismissed, insulted, compared. But I was a diamond, once buried, now blazing so bright it blinds those who once mocked me. I stood here, in the light I created for myself. I didn't need revenge, didn't need to prove anything. I only needed to be Jade Larson, the woman who found herself again, who built a new world out of broken pieces. I lifted my head, eyes calm, like a lake reflecting the stars. Freedom isn't about escaping the past. It's about walking through it, gently like the wind, to live a life brighter than ever before. I once loved, once sacrificed, once shattered. But from those shards, I built my own light, and nothing can extinguish it.